I'm going to read from the anthology. I have two pieces in here. One is the title poem from my book, Rain Scald. When standing in rain for so long, you no longer hear or feel it falling. You believe it's stopped. Step away. Look to your skin, muck itch. It's a shame your hands have gone bald from fungus, taking you to what's beneath scab, to one of those nights when you know your gums will bleed. To say it's been a while or it has to do with wrist mange is to say rot comes so easily now. Skin weep, lapse, step through the whole black of your home and still know damp, know exactly when to bend your finger for the light switch. So familiar in a bod, shame, your hands have gone haywire, taking you to what's beneath rust, ranges they've grazed. A time when you're combed through, when you know your knuckles and all that rain has swallowed. Night song to the gorge dwellers. With no fire, you offer nothing. Say, a body found, Fall Creek Gorge, eventual. It is meaning to happen, meaning to say, dear fellow. It is with deep name, strung like hair, water strands made old, made white, too close to dark. Second tragedy, Fall Creek throat, repeated loss. Thurston almanac of the gorges, litany of wrists. Look down at your wrist, down here where the thick laps the lips, where you haven't been taught to pull yourself out of the plunge pool and look for fire, look for rings shifted to your thumb and forefinger, there like vapor wrapping you in strips. In this falling moment, cities sink into the depths, drown the earth, face carried up and away in the current of a whirlwind, where water and mountains hide in deep blue. What faces bring? A reservoir filled, following the night when day fell into day, soon followed by night into night to night, thrice with no moon, thrice with no flame, kept in the thick. Anna Saze. How can we die when we're already prone to leaving the table mid-meal, like ancient ones gone to breathe elsewhere? Salt sits still, but pepper's gone, rolled off in a rush. We've practiced dying for a long time, when we skip dance or town, when we chew. We've rounded out like dining room walls in a canyon, eaten through by wind. Sorry we rushed off. The food wasn't ours. Sorry the grease sits white on our plates. And the jam that didn't set, use it as syrup to cover every theory of us. Salt Lick. I left myself, a heifer, to her salt block to carve hip bone. Coastal deposits tinged dry in the nape's shelf, a jar of salt. I lost myself in granules, prone now to live life with a chiseled tongue, worn rare to the tip. It feels like that, like everything needs salt. Even lipoma tastes better adorned at the mouth of a gorge in thick chrysalis bling. I folded myself calmly, Hands in V, rush and ready to dive, just a sleek dip into beef stock for a moment, a pastoral hush. This is me mooing. Death comes heavy, pock marks, squirm, ringworm, ribeye, see the pooling grease, what's left of me, ribbon of fat, how it spools. Sonnet for my wrist. I tend to mistake your ribs for a hand towel. It hangs on a nail above the wash bowl, the hand towel ripped. There's something wearing about the end curve of thread. When I sleep, I keep my palms open. Verve. We were lovers in a field of gray. In Navajo, we say something roped. I'll radical when you hurt me something close. Even you waft, it's best I tether, forget flyaways I plucked, my bones, they lie to me like fray, like gaunt. I don't crawl back for fragments. Even a spinal cord of sinew, it's not going to close. You rope me from stray to grip. It's all for naught. I'm born for my father. Tangle people, our mouths in webs. Tonight, my wrists part and you chase my insides until they dangle into pieces. Round our wrists. We swing like shawls about the shoulders of brides, spread open in a field of snow. Though it's just yet fall, leaves bob red, foretell the absence of voice at eventide. Once we sat in the current of a longhouse, lulled in memory of a stew that warmed an ice monster. I raked the story for your elbow and warmth, a message so petty. Answer. I missed you when you left to carve a snow snake tunnel. Upon throwing my tendon caught in the eddy of creation, I could no longer lift logs to stack. This was love in the saying. I could only follow your collar in snow so far. Bark I braided round our wrists, round back. One of these days you will find me under the white, where autumn floats, rounding out the soles of our feet, where the arcs of our breaths hold. So I'm going to end with 2 sonnets because it's almost Halloween. Scary. Ooh. Okay, only one scary. Candy dish sonnet. Already the heart-shaped dish on my end table lies combed bare. Long strips dug out. A cleaning out. A scratch in grain, table scraps lain out so comely, meaning to love or hold cacao and almonds. Those striae of protein, a deep cut, I tell the butcher, I'll take the heart as soon as you can give it. A gift to the first child I come across. Crows in trees lean in with every crumple the butcher paper makes in my hand. Soon the branches will be naked as bone china, and we, like the skeletal sky, reach out for any sweet filling. Each drip drop chocolate kiss staining our fingers. Gown sonnet. Somewhere in some town, USA, there lies a bride in a trunk, in an attic, in a house, in a tangled mess of lace and limbs, a douse of clouds floating across the landscape of her eyes. Even now, her lace has begun to curl like eyelashes on a night ready for batting, and her blouse see-through as a ghost. But it isn't that blouse she now rests in. It's a gown her mother dyed with small snakeweed in warm waters weeks before her wedding day. The bride wasn't found until years later when a child in a veil, crowned with dandelions and mums playing hide and seek, broke the latch and lifted the wooden lid up, unearthing a beautiful head of hair still done up. Thank you. Okay, so it is my great pleasure to introduce Sherwin Bitsui. Sherwin's been a reading buddy of mine these past few months. So it's been wonderful to be able to see him so often. And he is also the same tribe as I am, Diné. He was born in White Cone, Arizona, and a graduate of the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe. He's authored 3 collections of poetry, Shapeshift, Flood Song, and Dissolve. He's been awarded an American Book Award, a Whiting Award, a Truman Capote Creative Writing Fellowship, and a Lannan Literary Fellowship. He teaches at the Institute of American Indian Arts MFA program and at Northern Arizona. Please welcome Sherwin Bitsui.
Yate Hilchen. It's good to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I don't know if you can, but I'm happy to be here to support this amazing anthology. And I'm just really delighted to be with Tacey, Amanda, Cassandra, Tommy, and Leanne. It's really good to see you again. We're sort of like a traveling cyber circus in a way. We're just going place to place, erupting from different spaces as we're celebrating this book. But I'll go ahead and read maybe I'll just read one piece from this anthology that is mine, and it's from Flood Song, and it's the word for water, and it kind of goes like this. Toi, 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 toi. So that's the I always thought about, I grew up in the high desert, and I water was very, very scarce. I guess it's true that if you have never carried a bucket of water to the sheep corral or the horse corral, I don't know. It does something to you. There's some sort of relationship one has with water at that point because it's pretty heavy. But I did that when I was growing up. It snowed here in New Mexico recently. So this is a piece I wrote when I was a visiting professor in Missoula, Montana. And I like to go to bookstores and, just check out books. And at the time, I think Hastings was still present and open. And I don't know, there's this weird thing that happens, I think, just being native in this country, is that we're also very invisible. And I sense that a lot in my experiences, just walking into conversations where I think maybe I'm not expected to be there. And this was one of them. And there's a refrain here called The Mexican Man. And within this poem, I kept hearing this girl say the Mexican man throughout the whole time I was there. It's called White Out. I drive over black ice to watch a sun rise in a book about the desert. The Missoula whiteout is a guest that won't leave. In the cafe, a girl and her friends laugh over coffee about the Mexican man she shot with her Nerf gun. Just another Helena night. The man drove by, car windows rolled down, then a sting on his cheek. It's what they do. send foam darts into the dark caves of passing cars. She tells them the Mexican man followed them for miles afterwards. We were scared he might do something. We drove until he disappeared. I stare for hours, it seems, at the same book cover, then finally shush each other, or oh, at the same book cover. They finally shush each other. Wait, okay. Oh. As silence unlatches hands, feeling for closed words and the blackout of my mouth. Back to my car adrift, I turn the key and drive from one whiteout into another. Just a little glimpse of some of the new work I'm trying to do. This is from Dissolve, and I'll just finish reading with this piece. It's a section in the middle of Dissolve, and I think I was living in San Diego at the time. So I was living by an ocean beach in a basement, and I kind of wrote there's a lot of these dreams I was having. So some of these were sparked by dreams. You pin porch lights to cage bars, painted with harbor air. Wait, can you hear me? Okay, sorry about that. I didn't. You pin porch lights to cage bars, painted with harbor air. Sip molten glass, sweating on an equinox, too hot to pluck open with brittle teeth. Beneath our hovering, tasered smoke sinks and oars roots into its mouth of 10 years. The mapping we spoke of in the subway, chest fat on sleep self-portrait, naze spasms onto songs braiding their highest leaves into our necklaces of smoke. Radio waves groan under ashen dragonflies as you polish irradiated triggers with scalped hair. Sage and creosote coat the withers of spray-painted horses. New suns sizzle from slits in their golden flanks. In our cornfields, piled waist high, swept from clan melt, then steeped in bear grease. Relocated hyphens pollinate headaches with blurred visions. Father's dying ceased when he refunded this hours for fused hands plaster coated in a glottal stop's brief paralysis. Pinpricked holes for eyes, reversible teeth hemmed in copper thread, polished brow bone swiveling through trimmed hedges. He atrophies this aftermath, its highest frown withering on maps that dreamed our shadows waterlogged. He then howls a constellation of anchors flung at bluebirds pausing mid-flight where pewter wind creaks shut over a raft's hesitation. He explains the sun not carried by horse, but a ceiling lamp flickering on our computer screens. Mother threw a platter of blind spots on her son without knowing that bees ached in her feet. The beads of her breath sank into his chest. He kept them 5 long years. A tassel of singed hair cinched around his wrists, latchkeys soothing songbirds in his pockets of fire. He stains the night's rim with sprigs of dry air exiting fevering bodies, cupped briefly by their itching. She dabs clear his brow, remembers syringes filled with lake mist, wonders whether it was him who strung teeth marks across her wrists the night before. Together they pace the ravine's gauge nearing empty, step upon a pale horse lying on the earth's heat, legs upright in the cattle guard, butcher paper stretched taut over wiry ribs. Its gasping sent them barreling back toward the awakened cornfield. Somewhere between, they leaped back into their bodies. They didn't recognize their own voices. Her apparition ferries the flowers of their bruises back to the severing. The bullwhip's knotted eye turns toward her and only her. When fences come to suckle, where will her mind's legs carry her? Moths mill about her feet sleeping fountains. Her throat's cave claims each sun's song, wears them like tiger's legs across nights striped and fanged. See how they stretch between moon and helium, how they weave, tuned and plucked out of the sea's gasped maw, how they uncover with clear hands a handful of hushed hours, held like silver coins, where their eyes fail to shut for the third time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sherwin. It's always so great to read with you. Up next, we have Leanne Howe, who is Choctaw. She writes poetry, fiction, nonfiction, and screenplays. She is the Edison Distinguished Professor at the University of Georgia. Howe is a United States Artist Ford Fellow, as well as the recipient of a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Native Writers Circle of the Americas. Also an American Book Award and an Oklahoma Book Award. She's also a Fulbright Distinguished Scholar to Jordan. Her most recent collection of poetry is Savage Conversations that came out just last year. Please welcome Leanne Howe.
Thank you, Tacey, and thank you for organizing this. Bookworks, thank you so much. It's really an honor to be with all of you and read. I'm going to read from the book that we worked hard on and are so proud of, the Norton Anthology. And so I'm going to read a couple of pieces. And I wrote this first piece. It's called The List We Make. I was on book tour. This has been when my first novel came out. And I just felt like this whole culture. I was in California in San Francisco, and I felt very like that my whole body was being cannibalized. And so I don't know where that came from, except I think that I had done a lot of history about the area and what happened to the Miwok Indians. And so out of that came The List We Make. Part 1. Luis and Salvador, the two Miwok guides for the 1848 Donner Party, were the first to be shot and eaten as food. William Foster had become deranged, and it's understandable why, knowing what he endured. He was terrified he would die of starvation, and Foster planned on murdering the Indians for food. Luis and Salvador promptly ran away. The party followed their tracks. It was easy. The feet of the Indians had become so raw from the exposure to all their toes had fallen off, marking their trail with blood. Foster figured if the Indians didn't lead them to safety, they could at least find their corpses to use as food. By January 9th or 10th, the Indians had suffered terrible exposure to the cold and survived on practically nothing to eat with no fire. They couldn't last like that. They gave out near a small creek, and it was here the forlorn hope came upon them. Despite argument from some, and the Indians' look of horror, Foster shot the 2 Indians with his rifle. They would not have lived long, but the act was horrifying. Part 2. The waiting road arrives. This time, San Francisco moves along the abyss in a black car filled with dawn and men's underwear. Again, a membrane binds us, and I crave all you offer, your hands, your poet's wrists that bleed on the page, your penis of words that penetrates my vagina like a wet weapon. We drape our bodies with new surroundings, but like movable sets on a theater stage, we fear hammer and nails, hunger, death, longing, and consumption. We cafe, trying to remember who we are for each other, At Dolly's, wide omelets, big cups of brown espresso, unearth old hungers, centuries old, beckon. You curves us together, and we breathe in the same thin air. We breathe in each other and forget all that has happened. On the road made flesh, they separate us from our fingers and toes, separate us from our bones. At first, we are swallowed whole, like the wafers of God. Down the gullets of hungry Christians, everything we did, everything we didn't do is digested in their dreams. Now they know us better than we knew ourselves. On the lam again, we head north to the casinos, becoming what we fear, consumers of goods and services. We give $20 to a stranger to teach us how to attach chains so we can slip past Donner Pass, where banquet chairs pose still as icicles, patiently waiting our return. We race toward the Biltmore Motel. Our music is hard sevens. We lunch in the high Sierras, and you teach me to gamble. We crash a writer's conference. A bad poet reads an ode to appetite. But this time, we will not be dinner. Part 3. 7,000 feet up, though Lake Tahoe stalks us, we practice our escape by devouring a repugnant pig like our killers once devoured us. At the All-American Cafe, you and gray to my conventional black, we dine on goose liver, pineapple, curried ice cream. Where are Luis and Salvador now? Who the hell cares? We're following a treasure map of flesh and blood, the ghost camouflage of exotic appetites that came for Luis and Salvador has infected us all. And what of this steamy you and I? This steam, this you and I. Imprisoned by a hoary god's ravenous hunger, we have not shadow's gaze, nor eyes and ears, no shadowy past, nothing but here and now made manifest within a complexion of stars. Our bodies conjoined in the heaven, on earth as Luis y Salvador, conjoined in blood, and oddly enough, love. I'm going to read from Noble Savage Sees a Therapist. This is also in the southeastern section. I have a whole series of Noble Savage poems, and his friend, of course, is Indian Mascot. And one of these days, I'm going to put them all together in a book. But this is Noble Savage, and he's seeing a therapist. Noble Savage. She's too intense for me, and I feel nothing. No emotion. In fact, I'm off all females. Even lost my lust for attacking white chicks. Pause. The therapist is writing furiously on a yellow pad, but says nothing. Noble Savage. People expect me to be strong, wise, stoic, without guilt. A man capable of a few symbolic acts. Ugh. Is that what I'm supposed to say? Therapist. He continues writing. Noble Savage. I don't feel like maiming, scalping, burning wagon trains. I'm developing hemorrhoids from riding bareback. It's an impossible role. The truth is, I'm conflicted. I don't know who I am. What should I do, Doc? Therapist. I'm afraid we've run out of time. Let's take this up during our next visit. And I will finish reading with this poem. Choctaws have a kind of a core, we share a core narrative about our removal from our homelands. And when we get together, we still talk about this event as if it was yesterday. We're the first tribe to be removed on the Trail of Tears. But if you listen to us when we're all together, it's like it happened yesterday. And so it's imprinted on our, I think, memories. So this is called Ishki, Mother, upon leaving the Choctaw homelands, 1831. Right here is where I once suckled babies into red people. Right here, we grew 3 sisters into corn, beans, and squash. Right here, we gave goods to all who hungered. Right here, we nurtured abundance. Right here, my body was a cycle of giving until torn from our homelands by the Nahola and Andrew Jackson, the duteous seamster, intent on opening all veins. Right here, there's a hole of sorrow in the center of my chest, a puncture, a chasm of muscle, sinew, bones. Right here, I will stitch my wounds and live on and sing and sing. I am singing still. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leanne. It's so wonderful to have your voice here tonight with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for making us laugh. So next we have Cassandra Lopez, who is Cajillo, Tongva, and Luiseño. She has an MFA from the University of New Mexico and is the author of a poetry collection, Brother Bullet. Lopez teaches at the Northwest Indian College and is co-founder of the journal As Us, a space for women of the world. Currently, Lopez is working on a memoir titled A Few Notes on Grief. Please welcome Cassandra Lopez.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Tacey and Amanda at Bookworks for organizing this. It's great to read it with everyone. I'm gonna start off with reading a poem that's in the anthology. I call it my greatest hit because it was once in Indian Country Today, and so that's what was the most accessible. So I'll go ahead and read it. It's called A New Language. My words are always collapsing upon themselves, too tight in my mouth. I want a new language, one with at least 50 words for grief and 50 words for love, so I can offer them to the living who mourn the dead. I want a language that understands sister pain and heart hurt, so when I tell you brother is my hook of heart, you will see the needle threading me to the others, numbered men, women, and children of our grit spit city. I want a language to tell you about 2010's 37th homicide, the unsolved, a man that my city turned to number, sparking me back to longer days when ocean is the mouth of summer, our shell fingers drive into sand, searching we find tiny silver sand crabs. We scoop and scoop till we bore and go in search of tangy seaweed. We are salted sun, how we brown to earth, our warm flesh flowering. Is that in this new language we say sun and sea, reminding us of an old language our mouths had forgotten, but our marrow remembers. I'm gonna read another book from my another poem from my collection. I picked out a one set in Albuquerque because this is Bookworks reading, and I used to I enjoyed going to Bookworks when I lived in Albuquerque. So I picked out an Albuquerque poem. Um, it's called Eclipse, Albuquerque 2012. Brother is my eclipse, the perfect alignment, one body covering another. I wish my body more fierce, a shield to cover for brother on bullet night. My one great regret, eating away at my brain. I'm becoming unfleshed. Investigate this. How do I walk around alive when there is all of this consuming me? Can I name bullet moon, or is death the moon? What is it that leaves the stain of fire behind? Eclipse glasses perch on my nose, hollow of orange, hollow of red. I try to see into the sky where brother is said to be, even as the body I knew as his was made into particles. There was no moon on bullet night, but maybe that is only memory. I remember the rain, the darkness, my fear. The next day, I saw no sun. I ate the clouds. The dampness soaked into my boots. The moon had nothing to cover, but we were eclipsed. Bullet or maybe moon left me with a stain of fire. My lament, a badge, follows me everywhere I go. Sometimes the blaze is fury. Sometimes it is a soft sorrow. I look to the sky and see it all burning. So I'm going to read this other poem that is about San Bernardino. It's called Welcome to San Bernardino. Here is our city of abandonment, a country of metal and might. Learn to guard your grit. Get ready for puncture of skin and muscle. Bone could be next. Are we malleable yet? The beauty of these streets is cloaked in a gust of earth and swipe of spray paint. Peel back a layer and smile at the joy, the hot soak of a loose city. Some here beg for cement and others for sky. Some days I go away sticky with city, and some days I'm so lonely I can't bear to lose one more thing. Father walked blocks and blocks of concrete until his hips became titanium. Inside his body, he is all lustrous and silver. Inside of the broken and worn weary is something that resists. I name it the same as this city, name it the same as this hunger, the name it the same as my metal mouth that hides the departed. My mouth did bleed with infection, and I wondered if I'd ever heal. The white gauze could not silence me. I pull it out to show everyone how I bleed, show them my missing. I open it wide to mark the existence of absence. Do I have enough iron in my blood for you to taste my metal? Are you sensitive to our bitter? My mouth has become all valley and mountain, an tied tongue. So much of us is invisible to the naked eye and news articles. I'm hammered tired reading our names on listicles of the most dangerous cities in California. We live greater than list of victims, property values, and White House misspellings. Every year, our gutters flow open to relieve this desert. May drizzles and torrents of rain are both blamed on an Indian curse. This is hardly a curse. We wear it so easily because a curse is just the other face of prayer. If we are cursed, it is by bullet and not rain. There is no way to ignore the fact that some will be born here and some will die here. How blessed we are, like stars, learning to hold ourselves together by our own gravity. Okay, checking my time. I'm going to read two short little excerpts from my memoir that I'm working on. And so they're just little short pieces. And the first one comes from a section that I'm working on that's called Hanukvaktam, which means ancestors. So this is it. A woman tells me she's a descendant of a famous Indian chief. She pulls up her shirt sleeve to show me a tattoo of a feather. She seems a little too eager to show me how her pink skin is marked by black ink. I have other friends who I don't doubt when they mention their noted ancestors, and I think of my own, how I have learned to say Hangnukvaktam, and I wonder what should be noted and remembered about my ancestors. What if some were drunks or musicians or pious Indian Catholics? What if some were red light district women, hustlers, wanderers, and even mentioning this rumor causes family members to move uncomfortably as if there were tiny pins pressed against their skin? And what if our Hanukvaktam were not happy with our silence? What if others worked two jobs or only wanted to work the land, having no desire for the spectacular except the world they saw all around them? What if my ancestors were railroad workers, blacksmiths, or ranchers living in Sahatapa and were visited by relatives singing bird songs before they made their way back to someplace else? What if some were healers and midwives, knew how to cure from the land, but they couldn't heal the children away at boarding school? What if there was nothing named after them except their children and grandchildren? What was named after them has been long forgotten except by a few? What if some had many names, or the history books had it all wrong? What if my ancestors didn't lead any revolts or rebellions, but each breath was still a resistance? What if there was one who was born under a walnut tree and came back home decorated from war with medals, but was shell shocked? What if they cashed their California Indian Commission checks and wrote, "Not paid in full"? And then I have a last little one that I'm going to read. And it's an excerpt from a longer essay. I'm trying to find it here that is going to be published in the Cincinnati Review. And it comes from an essay that's called Lineage. And I'm just going to read a little section of it. And in this essay, talk about my family on both sides, my family, and the history of my hometown of San Bernardino. Ntongba Wachanga means San Bernardino, and Wachavatam means people from San Bernardino. This seems to be the best way to describe myself. I am from a place, and I am that place. If I were asked what part of Mexico Mother's family was from, I could not tell you. This is the work of assimilation and American progress or the American dream. This is the work of history of poverty and migration. This is the work of people who believe they can create and shift borders with a simple mark on a map. What I know is that several of my great grandparents were born in parts of Texas and California, land that Anzaldúa says was Mexican once, was Indian always, and is and will be again. It is through their stories that I try to fight against amnesia, fight against the sweet anesthetic of miseducation that try to turn my brain and tongue docile. This is how I will grow up with my homelands all around me, but also out of reach. My parents have lived in the same house for most of my life. Father selected the house because of the citrus trees and large driveway. It seemed to him like a place where no one would bother him with all the cars and car parts that he worked on. I grew up with the smell of oil and fumes of auto body paint, the sound of painter's tape being ripped off, and the hum of a compressor. Father's hands were stained. The tip of a finger is missing. The tip of the finger lost under the weight of an engine. I have never known him to be without this missing part of himself. When he was not working as a mail carrier, he was creating beauty. He speaks a language of suspension systems, rims, and engines. When I was a child, he painted a Mustang candy apple red, and I wanted to run my tongue against the curve of the slick red fender. It was others, people from outside my neighborhood, who taught me to be ashamed of where I grew up. They taught it to me through their words and the taste in their voice when they talked about the local shops, schools, and people. The way some people turn the name San Bernardino into San Bernardino. There is nothing here for you. This was never said to me, but I've heard it many times. Look at any comment section about an article or on an article or YouTube video about San Bernardino. They say it is a festering cancer. They say San Bernardino has always been a shithole. They say there is no saving San Bernardino. They say downtown is a ghost town, a shell of what it once was. They say I'm working on getting my family out of here. They say, I left San Bernardino 26 years ago and I'm glad I did. God bless everyone there. Just leave. There was a time I too thought I wanted a fresh start, that it would be easy to forget, but I keep coming back. That's it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cassie. I love how we're just kind of moving all over, even though we're in Southwest, we're still, I feel like we're moving all over from urban and res and time and distant time. And anyway, okay, next we have Tommy Pico, who is from the Kumeyaay tribe. He was born and raised on the Viejas Reservation and now divides his time between Los Angeles and Brooklyn. He's the author of the poetry collections IRL, Nature Poem, Junk, and Feed. Pico has been the recipient of numerous fellowships and awards, including a Lambda Literary Fellowship, a New York Foundation for the Arts Fellowship, an American Book Award, and a Whiting Award. Currently, he is a contributing editor at the website Literary Hub, and he co-hosts the podcast Food for Thought. Please welcome Tommy Pico.
Hi, thank you, Tacey, Leanne, Cassandra, Sherwin, and Bookworks. I remember the first time I went to Albuquerque. I was a little boy and I was on a road trip with my dad and mom and my brother, and they bought these chili peppers and they put them in the back. It was the maroon Honda Civic. And I remember playing with them because I had like little G.I. Joes and like little Barbies and stuff, and I was playing with them like they were my little men. And then like later on I put them down and then I wiped my eyes. And I will never forgive Albuquerque for that. Also, Cassandra, thanks for mentioning the bird songs. My dad was a bird singer and with the gourd, and they named me Ishakapa, which means bird song in Kumeyaay. Also, shout out Kumeyaay Nation, no fucking border walls on sacred lands and all that kind of stuff. I'm gonna read from this wonderful book. Leanne, thank you so much for putting it together. Tacey, thank you so much for organizing this. And it was just like really exciting to be part of this like experience expansive list of poets, esteemed and respected, and people who I read and who made me want to write poetry and to be like, oh, I'm in conversation with them. It's not like it never occurred to me before, but like this really put it into perspective, like that we're all writing for and towards and across and to and through each other, and just how connected this book made me feel to all my people, whether, you know, like whether like Tacey, like meeting you at the Austin Book Festival, or through As Us, Cassandra, which we first met, or Leanne meeting you in, I think it was Georgia, right? And then we did the conference and we did Knowles, or I came to Knowles, and then Sherwin, who I just met a couple weeks ago online at a similar reading with natives. It's just really exciting to share this space that we can. So this is from a book called Nature Poem. Like poison oak, and poison oak, I used to get poison oak so bad because, like, I don't know about you guys, but like they never let me in the house. Like I spent most of my time outside, you know, in the brambles barefoot and shit. And like I would just get poison oak all the time. I get poison oak and head lice. And I remember I used to get lice like at least twice a year. And my mother, I remember every time I got it, we would just cry. Because you knew how I would just have my head bent over the tub with that knit comb and how much laundry we had to do. And I remember later on, I think in high school, because I went to a high school off res. We didn't have one on the res at the time. And I remember saying, oh, it's like when you get head lice. And everyone was like, what? And I was like, no, you know, when you get lice, you know, it's like when you get lice, you do the thing. And they were just like, that's like third world country shit. And I was like, bitch. Well, I got it twice a year. Okay, so fuck off. Anyway, this is from Nature Poem. Like poison oak, or the left eye part in waterfalls, you become a little bit of everything you brush against. Today, I'm a handful of raisins and about 15 people on the water taxi. When my dad texts me 2 cousins dead this week, one 26, the other 30, what I'm really trying to understand is what trainers at the gym mean when they say engage in the phrase engage your core. Also core, restless terms batted back and forth. Rest is a sign of necrosis. Life is a cycle of jobs. The biosphere is alive with menthol smoke and my unchecked voicemails. I still don't check my voicemails, by the way. I, for one, used to believe in God and comment boards. I would say how far I am from my mountains, tell you why I carry kumyai basket designs on my body, or how freakishly routine it is to hear someone died. But I don't want to be an identity, or a belief, or a feedback. I want to be me. I want to open my arms like winning a foot race and keep my stories to myself, I tell my audience. Grief is sneaking cigs from the styrofoam cups on the tables next to the creamers and plates of Mary's pineapple upside down cake, running off to the playground behind the schoolroom trailers to try and smoke them. We were supposed to grow old together, hold down food, run for cover, give birth, body. The job was to keep breathing. And so then, and they see Leanne, and also they never cut my hair neither. So it was like, have it in the long hair and then just like hours and hours in my scalp. Okay, so the other thing I'm gonna read is okay. So I'm writing a pilot. I live in Los Angeles. I'm like doing the whole Hollywood thing. I'm in a writing room right now, which happens to be the first all Native American writers room in the history of Hollywood. Which is pretty exciting. And I'm sorry to Sherwin because I read this at the reading last week, but I'm going to read a scene from the pilot that I wrote. It's called The Pleasure Principle. It takes place in New York. I lived in New York for 15 years. I moved there when I was 18 and I moved back a couple years ago. and it's about two best friends who work at a sex toy store called The Pleasure Principle. Their names are Lauren and Tommy, because I have a fantastic imagination and I am so great with names. So yeah, so this is like from Tommy's perspective. It's a little bit like Superstore. It's like a workplace comedy, right? So it's a little bit Superstore, it's a little bit Broad City, and like a little bit Dr. Ruth. And in the beginning of the pilot, at the top of the pilot, Tommy's quit his job at the sex toy store. And now we see him, he's gotten an interview for an assistant job for this photographer. The photographer's name is Clymanita Vinderval. Clymanita Vinderval. That's just, her name is Clymanita Vinderval. Interior, Clymanita's office. Afternoon. Clymanita, 50s, eccentric but austere white lady a la Tilda Swinton, mists tropical plants near the window, not bothering to turn around when Tommy enters. Clymanita, I know they say now that misting doesn't do much for the plants, but I find it quite therapeutic. Tommy, the only plant I'm good with is jazz cabbage, if you know what I mean. He smiles, but she turns to him and stares blankly. What are you here for? The assistant job. Yes. She squints at him a second before looking very pleased, eyes widening. Oh, yes. Very excited to meet you. Clymanita Vinderval, as you know. She juts out her hand as if expecting someone to kiss it. Tommy just shakes it awkwardly and gingerly. Tommy Diaz. I gave him Natalie's last name. Tommy Diaz. Thank you for giving me this interview so quickly. I thought it was a long shot considering my resume is not great. Oh, yes. Quite horrible. I don't know that I'd trust you to get me the right green juice. Tommy looks at her like, thank you, ? But I went to your website, really just to see if you were a real person. You know, sometimes the girls like to give me a good chuckle every now and then, but what I saw, she clasps her hands skyward for a minute. Perspective. You have perspective, and that's as good as any trait in this business. So you like my pictures? What? Oh, the photos on that website were yours. I thought it was just some terrible clip art. Great sense of humor. No, your biography page says that you are from an Indian reservation. Can we say that? Should I say Native American reservation? I don't, yes, it's fascinating, yes, and I could use someone with your lineage. You see, for my next series, she sits behind her desks and motions for Tommy to take a seat across from her. He sits as she opens a file folder of ephemera, magazine clippings, documents, old photos, etc. I'm divining inspiration from Native American themes. You see, at my last opening, I had this glorious conversation with a Native American man. She smiles tightly at Tommy, congratulating herself for using the correct terminology. And he told me the strangest thing. He said that Native Americans have this superstition about having their photograph taken, that it steals their soul. Is this true? She looks into Tommy for recognition. I don't really have much of one to steal. Clymanita emits a high-pitched laugh. Really, what I need is not an assistant. I need a collaborator. I want to go about this the right way and not get myself abolished on Twitter. Canceled. You mean canceled. She clasped her hand to her chest. You see, we're already doing it. Now, I don't want to take pictures of the Native Americans themselves. I wouldn't want to put them in any danger, but I was thinking of other people in Native garb. You see, she slides a few pictures of headdresses in front of a horrified looking Tommy without looking up at him. Is it true that warriors were given eagle feathers corresponding to the amount of men they killed in battle? I read that somewhere. I don't really know about all that. It sounds like more of a Plains tribe thing. I'm from California. She looks up at him, confused, not saying anything. He decides to chuck honesty completely. He's gonna have fun. No, actually, it was toenails. You had to bring toenails from the person you killed to get the feather. If you ground the toenails into a paste and ate them, you get the warrior's strength. She rests her hand on her chin. Fascinating. End scene. Thank you.